Right, let's go back to one of our top stories now on the energy strategy that was released by the government today. Joining us now is Dr. Paul Dorfman, Associate Fellow with the Science Policy Research Unit at the University of Sussex. Thank you so much for joining us, Paul. First of all, what do you make of the focus on nuclear within the government's energy strategy today?
The key is cost.
Are we all right there, Paul? There seems to be a bit of a background noise. Can you hear us all right?
I can hear you, but I'm getting a reverb.
OK, well, did that sound OK? That sounded all right. Should we try again? So I'll just ask you for your thoughts on the focus on nuclear in the government's energy strategy today.
Yeah, the key is cost. Lazard, the International Financial Institute, comes up with wind solar renewables at 20 to 25 pounds per megawatt hour electricity, with nuclear at a stonking 120 pounds per megawatt hour. So, meanwhile, the International Energy Agency says that by 2050, 91% of all new electricity will be renewable. So, in terms of evidence-based, the discussion is over. The heavy lifting for the energy transition will be done with renewables. And nuclear is only being built by essentially command and control countries like Russia and China, and with vast public subsidy. So what this means is that if Boris Johnson wants to make the UK into a little toxic garden, the UK public, the UK taxpayer and electricity consumer will be on the hook for these vast costs that are associated with nuclear construction.
Now, what I understand, Paul, is that in terms of the figures of megawatt hour, the price is for the Hinkley Point C power station, which is a higher unit price. And actually, in terms of a more standard comparison, actually, it will be affordable and it will reap dividends.
Well, no, that's not the case, according to Lazard, which is these figures are universally accepted. Lazard is a key institutional financial institute. So, no, wind and solar costs are up to a quarter of that of nuclear. And once again...
Well, of course, Paul, what we do, I mean, it's all part of a broad picture of a mix of energy sources, isn't it? And of course, when the wind doesn't blow and if solar isn't enough, we need something else. And for the government and for many, that something else is nuclear energy.
But the problem with that is this sort of so-called intermittency. You know, what happens when the wind doesn't blow or the sun doesn't shine? Well, there are ways of getting around this in terms of storage, interconnection, load balancing, grid upgrade, and most important, of course, is demand-side management, energy efficiency, and energy conservation. But the last thing that you want to back up renewables, and remember what I said, there's no energy professor any in the world who will tell you that the renewable evolution isn't here. Renewables will do the heavy lifting. The last thing that you want to back up renewables is nuclear. Nuclear is very bad at what we call load following, in other words, powering up and powering down to cover any form of intermittency. You switch nuclear on and it goes. So there's a real problem here in terms of the evidence base and current UK energy policy, which has to be said is quite a bit of an outlier internationally.
Well, so what do you make of the government's focus on it then? Because, of course, they're saying this is something that makes up the mixed picture of the different energy sources we need. And, you know, I think many will agree that, you know, the focus should be on renewables like wind and solar. But just very briefly, what's your view on the government's strategy, which covers a mix of these?
Well, I mean, as I said, if one looks at the evidence base, it does seem to be deeply problematic. And recent events in Ukraine have looked at the weaponization of civil nuclear. It has to be understood that Russian-controlled uranium currently supplies 42% of all reactors worldwide. So there are significant implications for what's going on in Ukraine as well, too. And the reality is nuclear is very, very slow. It takes about 10, 15 years to build just one reactor. Now, this is to a certain extent out of the picture for certainly for the climate crisis, the energy crisis, and potentially very much so for our climate crisis. So there's a real issue here that there's a real potential that the evidence base really doesn't bear out this new government paper.
Well, thank you for your thoughts. We'll have to leave it there. Dr. Paul Dorfman from the University of Sussex.